All right, so every step of the way, my disabilities were used to prevent me from being able to speak on my own behalf, to prevent me from being able to show evidence, to prevent me from being able to bring charges against those who are harming me. People like the Boulder Police Department, like the Bollinger family, Ted Bollinger in specific, but also their extended family. People like Danica Garner, Rochelle Shelley Campbell, their friend Cara Rogers, aka Cara Mia, and a great many other people, including um, Adam Klein, um, Sarah Victoria Funderburg, um, Jennifer Farina Bollinger, and many, many others. I mean, their whole family took part in this, including Rose Kelly, that's Natalie's mother, and Denise Kelly, that's Natalie's grandmother. The things that they did to me, they did repeatedly, over and over and over again, and they took turns doing this and slandering my name in between. Because of my disabilities that they used to great effect to call me mentally ill and pretend like I was dangerous. I am dangerous. I am. The things that I have to say and the things that I have to show could put these people in prison. You goddamn right they're fucking scared shitless and they better be. I will pursue this until the end of my life if I have to. Now, these people, if given a choice between prison or telling the truth, which one do you think they would choose? Now, when I tried to go to the police repeatedly to show what was going on, the police repeatedly told me it's out of my jurisdiction, it's out of my jurisdiction, it's out of my jurisdiction. And they're telling me to do things that I don't have the ability to do. I don't have the money to do. I don't have a place to do it. I don't have the peace and quiet required to do so. That peace and quiet is extremely important. Now, there's a lot of things that I would be able to learn if I wasn't under an extreme amount of stress. And that stress is mostly from not having the money and not from having a place. Now, my paperwork up there at Hilltop, it shows that until January of 2018, they had me written in as being a resident there. The problem is that Natalie died in December of 2017. And in December of 2017, those of you who watched the video between me and Jay, when we talk about Ken and Leah, that's where I was staying before Natalie was killed. When we talk about Dawn and Freak, these are two people who took part in the threats, the harassment, and the assaults. Um, the thing is that all of the crimes that I committed, I had to commit to try to force a day in court, to try to force evidence to be looked at, so that I could stop the abuse that I literally continue to endure to this day. Um, you guys have a lot of ideas that are completely wrong. When it comes to sensory overload issues, if you're talking, yeah, I can't function. When the train goes by, I have to either talk over it really loud to try to maintain my train of thought, or I have to stop and wait for the train to go by and really think about it to try to not lose my train of thought, because there is so much that I've had to deal with. And all of it rolls around in my head, and all of it ties in together. Um, Jurisdiction. When it comes to jurisdiction, the jurisdictional laws were broken repeatedly. Repeatedly. And the thing is that all I needed was somebody to go in with me because I didn't have that. It was too easy way too easy for them to railroad me. I literally cannot have an honest chance at a life anymore. I can't have a decent life anymore. I have zero chance of it because I get overwhelmed. Now, all of the things that I did where I'm treating people like shit, it's because they treated me like shit by not understanding, by not trying to, by going out of their way to slander my name instead of talking to me like a human being. Instead of making an effort to understand, they want to type pretty words. That's why it's important to talk, to speak. Instead of you see one fucking text that you want to take wrong, and then I'm blocked. I'm no longer a human being to you. I am fucking garbage. Before I blocked anyone, I gave them a chance to talk to me like a human being. I was never afforded that opportunity. Never at any point in time was I afforded that opportunity. All of these people who claim to love me, obviously they don't love me if I'm not worth listening to. I was forced into situations that are detrimental to my mental health. When you've been through the amount of abuse that I have, yes, going to another abusive place and another abusive place and another one, and you're wasting what little resources that you have to go to all of these abusive places, and you have to hope that it's not an abusive environment. Because if you're stuck homeless or you're stuck living in your vehicle, you are going to be victimized by the police. When it comes to these people's history, I'm not allowed to show their history in court. I'm not allowed to show the things that they did in court. Meanwhile, they're allowed to slander me in court with court dates that they held without me, found me guilty without allowing me to be present, illegally preventing me from being present. In addition, I was trying to bring charges against those officers, to try to get a court date against those officers and against those judges for the things that they did because those things are illegal. But by preventing me from doing that, by taking away my finances, by taking away my housing, by escorting me out of courthouses to prevent me from doing that, knowing full well that that's what I was there for. By doing those things, magically, those judges were allowed to do those things to me again. Those people were allowed, these people who should have never, ever been allowed to touch those cases were allowed to do so. Officers who took part in threatening, harassing, and assaulting me and not doing their jobs previously were allowed to re enter the scenario in order to hide and cover up their wrongdoing by harming me physically and mentally. I was repeatedly prevented from going to courts illegally, and then I was punished because I didn't go to those court dates. I went to every single court date prior to having to break the law in order to show what was going on in court, in order to show what the Bollingers and their fucking cronies were doing. But then again, you have to go before a judge who took part in that previously, and you have to go before police officers who took part in that previously. All these people who claim that they were on my side, that they were in my corner, not a single one of them actually was. Not Dan Faber, not Cara Mia, aka Cara Rogers, not Aaron Cockerham. None of these people actually were. Now, there's a lot of laws that were broken. Like, first of all, preventing me from showing evidence. Police officers across the United States refused to collect evidence. I was trying to show this evidence every step of the way, and not one lawyer, not even one, not one police officer, not even one, was willing to collect this evidence. So if they don't collect the evidence, that magically means that the crime wasn't committed, right? Let's go to jurisdiction for a minute. None of the stuff that happened between me and Natalie happened in Adams County. None of it. But that's where the protection order was granted, was Adams County, because I couldn't show up because Ken and Leah stole my money. If they hadn't stolen my money, after the shit that they were pulling in November and December of 2017, I just wanted to come back here to Chapel because it was safer than being there. At least if I was here in Chapel, I could have spent my money on what it needed to go to instead of having it stolen. Ken and Leah have a history of stealing from people, but I'm not allowed to show that. I called Adult Protective Services. I called the police stations. I called all sorts of places because Miss Peaches couldn't keep her word for whatever reason. But I wasn't allowed to show that in court. And Miss Peaches wasn't fucking showing up. They took complete advantage of the term mentally ill, gave me the mentally ill treatment. They knew that all they had to do was discredit me, and magically they could get away with doing whatever they wanted. And they did that to great effect. I'm mentally overwhelmed. There's a difference. I need my own place where I can sit down and work on this stuff and not have to worry about disrupting other people's lifestyles. Because if I disrupt their lifestyle and I disrupt their life at all, every little bit that I do that, it annoys people. It annoys people. But the thing is, these people could have spoken to each other. They could have made at least that much effort. But they couldn't. All these people thought that it would just blow over. If they ignore it, it'll magically go away. No, it fucking won't. If you ignore it, it fucks me further. I don't have the luxury of ignoring it. It's not your stuff that's being stolen. It's not you who is forced into a situation where you have to trust questionable people because the cops aren't going to do their jobs. Needing someone to go in with you, at least when Laura Nelson went in there with me last week, at least they pretended to listen. And the rules that they gave me, that Officer Holloway versus what the sheriff had to say, they had completely conflicting stories. Now, what Officer Holloway had to say, if they'd have done what he said right at the very beginning of all this, if they'd have done that before Natalie fucking died, I could have had an honest day in court, but they didn't document shit. And that prevented me from being able to have an honest day in court. That prevented me from being able to take these monsters to court. I had to rely on people who just don't give a fuck about me. People who prove to me time and again that they just don't give a shit. Between coming forward like they promised to and waiting until I'm out of resources and throwing me away like trash, yes, what these people did was illegal. They took my resources under false pretenses. Graham did this. Tabby did this. A great many people did this, and I didn't have the resources to spend on that. Those were all wasted resources that I can't get back. I literally cannot take care of myself. You know what made me want to die so badly after Virginia? I mean, here I was. I had the things that I needed in order to be in Boulder and not be victimized by the police. I had a vehicle. I could take my backpack off and put it in that vehicle and go for a walk. And that severely reduced me getting assaulted by the police, getting threatened by the police, getting harassed by the police, who had made me suicidal to begin with their nonstop harassment and preventing me from sleeping. But because of the slander by the Bollinger family, That didn't matter because I was being assaulted in Boulder. I need a safe environment first. Locking me up in a mental institution is not a safe environment. I can't work on the things that I need to work on in a mental institution or in a jail. Meanwhile, when I was assaulted by the officers there in Boulder, Colorado, I wasn't breaking the law. They were breaking the law to try to lock me up so that I couldn't speak out about the things that Boulder had been doing for years. They had to prevent me from being able to speak up. They had to slander and destroy my name to the American public to justify the things that they had done. A lot of people threw me away like I was fucking trash because I exposed the fact that they didn't keep their word. And I keep hearing, oh, well, they're under no obligation to keep. Yes, they are. Yes, they absolutely are. You want to use the term mentally ill on me? There are certain rights that come with that. And every one of those rights has been denied to me. The right to the help that I need has been denied to me. Every step of the way. And every step of the way, because of the risk of me being victimized, it should have been recorded. I recorded as much as I could, but I needed help. What I got was false promises by people like, well, Darren O'Connor. Meanwhile, he's going to get away with the felonies that he committed because I no longer have those phones. Those phones that I spent over a year and a half trying to force an agency, any agency, to fucking take a look at. I shouldn't have had to depend on Brenda Dickinson for her mailbox. I had my own mailbox before Natalie was killed. I shouldn't have had to depend on alcoholics and drug addicts for the roof over their head because I had a roof over my head before Natalie died. I shouldn't have depended on donations from other people to help me out because before Natalie died, I had my disability income. I shouldn't have had to depend on all of these other people for food because before Natalie died, I had my food stamp card to help me with that. All of the resources that I had that I needed to be able to take care of myself were taken away from me, and that in itself is victimization. That in itself is cruel and unusual punishment. Every night I have a severe panic attack. Every night. The thing that goes through my head is that, God damn it, I don't have the help that I need. And I don't have a gun to blow my fucking head off. Meanwhile, all these court dates that I was trying to show the wrongdoing of these people, all of these court dates that I was illegally prevented from going to, all of them, these people were doing their best to cover up their own wrongdoing. And by preventing me from going to those court dates, by preventing me from filing a report against these people, by preventing me from having the resources that I needed to defend myself from these fucking monsters, they get to use those outcomes to harm me further, to prevent me further from being able to speak out against the crimes that have happened to me, to deny me my inalienable rights, Really, because I have been alienated from those rights every step of the way because of the mentally ill treatment, the label of mentally ill. Meanwhile, I don't have the ability to organize everything that I need to try that over and over and over again and have everything stolen from me repeatedly. And you want me to magically be able to do it. That is what you are asking for, is for me to pull some magic out of my ass. Well, you make excuses. You make excuses why I wanted it, needed it, chose it, and deserved it. Nobody deserves this. Even a child molester deserves an honest day in court because they might not be a child molester. Even a rapist deserves an honest day in court because they might not be a rapist. Even a murderer deserves an honest day in court because they might not be a murderer. That's the problem with these labels, is that if you're going to give somebody these labels, there are certain rights that go with those labels, like an advocate, like a caseworker, things that I never had. I had a caseworker who actually did her job. Her name was Tamara. And since then, I have not had that. I have had to depend on people who are drug dealers. And not all of them are drug dealers, some of them are just petty pot dealers. Brenda Dickinson was just a petty pot dealer. Lana Engeline and Amanda Engeline, just petty pot dealers. Derek Parrish and Joanna Taylor Smith, just petty pot dealers. The police did everything in their power to prevent me from being able to defend myself. You know how long it takes for you to get an officer in court? An average of 3 years. 3 years from when you start the paperwork. And they went out of their way at every step of the way to prevent me from doing that, to prevent me from putting that paperwork forward. And these websites, have you ever tried to file a report against a police officer on a website? Repeatedly, I have recorded on this YouTube repeatedly where I have tried to turn in officers. And it was the officer that I was history of doing these things. And I have to depend on these departments for help. Meanwhile, they're going out of their way at every juncture to prove that they're not interested in investigating those crimes against me. They're asking very pointed questions. Whatever it is that they can use to alleviate their wrongdoing, to try to cover up their wrongdoing. I never would have had to break the law if I had a caseworker who was willing to do their job. I wouldn't have had to break the law if I'd have had my resources, the things that were taken from me when Natalie died. Almost 2.5 years worth of this. Almost 2.5 years without those resources. Almost 2.5 years of jumping through hoops for my predators. And being too overwhelmed to be able to take care of myself. Now, the very few days where I was able to get something done, it's because I had a roof over my head and I had the house to myself, which seldom happened. That happened maybe 3 times the whole time that I was at Brett Roloff's house, and I got a lot done. I also made hundreds of phone calls that got nowhere. Just at Brett Roloff's house, hundreds of phone calls. When I was at Shannon Alvarado's, maybe 3 days. Total, the whole time I was there. When I was at my dad's, 0 days. 0 of them. I was still trying to do the things that I needed to do, but I was also busy jumping through things and hoops that my dad wanted me to jump through. When I was in Wyoming at Rihanna's in Rawlins, Wyoming, how many days? 0. I didn't have access to the internet there even. How about when I was in Cheyenne, Wyoming? 0 days. 0. I had access to the resources that I needed 0 days while I was there. I needed to be able to record what was going on while making the phone calls, and I couldn't do that. Most of the help that people gave me wasn't help. It was expensive shit that I didn't have the money for. But money on that expensive shit because they promised to help me how I needed. From Shannon Alvarado to my dad to Rand Ingersoll to Brett Roloff to Lana and Amanda Ingeline. But they didn't help how I needed. They all said, hey, if you do this, then I'll help you with that. And then I did what they wanted. And then they said, see, I helped you. No, you fucking didn't. I was doing what you wanted because you promised me if I did what you wanted, you would help me how I needed, and you never did. Then you want to play victim when I exposed the situation. Fuck you. You're a fucking cunt ass little bitch rag.